and welcome to another Soulforce Conversation. I'm Joseph Arnold.
I'm Raji Malik.
And today we're going to be talking about a really juicy paradox between discipline, the discipline that's necessary to master your craft, and the freedom that's also necessary to master your craft. And this is a place where a lot of artists, I think we've both experienced this, where it can get really imbalanced, either to one extreme or to another. And so today we're going to be sharing some stories about our own creative journeys around discipline and freedom, and what I tend to think of as like the more evolved way of creating that allows for both, allows an appropriate place for both.
Yeah, a balance.
So what's your story around discipline and freedom?
Well, when I was 19 years old, I was in college, and that was when I decided to pick up the guitar. So I saw someone play it, and I thought, oh my God, that is the coolest thing. I totally want to do that. And I was just smitten by the idea of it. So I found a guitar, and there I was sitting with it, and I didn't know anything about music. I had no formal training in anything at all. The idea of reading music was off the table because I have, around when I was 16, I have macular degeneration, and the nerve tissue started dying in the center of both of my eyes. So it makes it really hard to read. So reading music wasn't even a possibility for me. So I just talked to some friends, just explored, experimented, and my relationship with the guitar developed as just this thing to try to understand and to make sounds on. So I started doing that, and it was so fun and exciting, and it didn't have this idea I didn't have an idea in my mind of like, oh, I have to do this training or this, discipline around this thing to be able to create skill. I can just play and have fun and enjoy it. So that was the foundation of my relationship with playing guitar. And I've really held on to that. But as I've developed now, in past like 35 years of playing the guitar, the idea of having discipline and being like really committed to my craft and developing my skills has really grown in my attention. And yet it's very much infused with this commitment to just playing, not practicing, because play is a different thing. Practice has sometimes this feeling of like it's a chore and I have to do this. Playing is fun, only fun. So that's the feeling that I have when I pick up the guitar, is I'm going to play with this. And like, this is like a playground, hitting the different parts of the guitar, a playground of sound. What can I do to create different sounds? And then I've also entrained my brain to hear the sound waves and then kind of slip into an almost trance-like state because of the way that I see how sound waves move through the air in our bodies and affect us. So that's a little bit about what my relationship is with discipline and creativity.
Thank you. Yeah, and for me, I mean, the story that I share is sort of central to who I am and how I became, who I am, the artist that I am today, and how I came to write the book Soulforce. When I was in college, I was, for music, I was practicing many hours a day and really stressed out, and it was all discipline and drive, and that's what the environment around me was calling for, and so that's what I did. And I did it to such an extent that I really hurt my body. I had injuries in both arms, and it got so bad I could barely play anymore. So this is like the extreme of discipline. Like no play, no fun, no pleasure, no enjoyment, all drive, all self-denial. And I didn't mean to do that. It's just what I picked up from the culture and what I picked up from my parents, and no pain, no gain, that kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Except what I learned was that pain does not equal gain. You could take it too far. It's possible to take it too far in either direction, to become more lax and wishy-washy.
Mm-hmm.
And the trouble with that, even though it feels free, you don't end up really developing yourself fully. It does take discipline to develop your mastery of whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. But you can go too far in that direction. You could also go too far in the other direction of where I went, which is too much discipline, too much self-denial. And it ended up hurting my body and hurting my creativity. I was such a tense player. And so at that time, even though I was in so much pain. It seemed like a disaster for my music career. Like, am I ever going to be able to play violin anymore? That led to a series of transformations that helped me see the purpose of my creativity and how to create from a totally different way. And this, of course, happened through Alexander technique, which is a method of learning how to use your body with greater freedom and fluidity. And I eventually learned how to teach this because it was so profound what happened in my body. Instead of playing all tense and tight all the time, I learned how to play freely. And it wasn't because I gave up my discipline, though. It wasn't because I gave up on trying to do hard things. If anything, I've gotten so much better as a violinist because I balanced out my discipline and my freedom.
And not restricting the flow of energy.
Exactly. And I'd gone so far into the constriction and discipline, the kind of very narrow, life-denying kind of discipline, and then the Alexander technique helped balance that out by showing me that my body is full of life and has this creative energy inside me, and all I have to do is just get out of the way of it. So I spent the next decades unlearning so much and learning. This is really the key to me. This is what Soulforce is as well, or how to get in touch with your Soulforce, is bringing that freedom to the very moment where it requires the greatest discipline as well.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So when you were stuck in this feeling of like, I'm playing and I'm hurting myself, and am I even going to be able to play violin anymore because it hurts so much? When you saw like a glimpse of hope, was that because you started the Alexander technique?
Yeah.
And then at what point did that then turn into, instead of just like seeing light at the end of the tunnel in terms of how you're going to manage physically, when did you actually start to reconnect to that joy and spirit connection that is so important to music?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a sense it happened immediately, and it also took a really long time.
Huh.
I remember in an early Alexander technique class, this was still in music school, so this is some of my first experiences with Alexander technique. I remember playing a difficult piece, and the teacher was working with me. She had her hands on me, trying to help me let go of some tension, and I couldn't do both at once. And so I ended up just improvising so I could actually let my body go. I couldn't figure out how to play this difficult
Put your
piece.
attention on both things.
Yeah, it just didn't compute. And afterwards, the teacher said, at first it sounded fine, but a little bit mechanical, but then you sounded like Yehudi Menuhin, who's a great violinist of the 20th century. And
just oozing soul force.
Exactly. And so that was my first personal experience. Oh, when I get out of the way of myself, I have a really different impact. My expression has a really different impact on the people around me.
Did you feel that in the playing even before she said it?
I wasn't sure. I mean, I certainly enjoyed.
But you were focusing on things, so it was hard to really hear it.
Yeah, I was too close to it. I wasn't sure what was happening.
Okay. But then after you got that reflection, then you were like, oh, I need to explore this.
Yeah, it's like a little glitch in the matrix. Mm-hmm. In a sense, the matrix, for me, the matrix was all self-denial, puritanical self-control. That's how you get to where you're going.
Practice, and you will be successful.
Yeah. And so that was my matrix. But then these, like the pain was a glitch in the matrix, and then these moments of in the Alexander technique lessons, these were all glitches in the matrix, and that over time helped me develop a totally different model for creativity. Totally different model.
Explain. What's the different model?
So there's actually a really great analogy to artificial intelligence these days. People have the same question: is artificial intelligence really alive and intelligent, sentient, or is it just a machine? Is it just calculations that look very clever? And there's also like a left brain, right brain piece here as well. To the left brain, which is more mechanical, it's like things happen piece by piece. Things happen by analysis. Things happen by, like, imagine building something with Legos, one little piece at a time. as opposed to like a living being existing through flow and sensitivity. And so in our culture, we're so enamored of computers and what they're able to do, and this whole way of thinking, because it's like a worldview that we inhabit. Fundamentally, we inhabit. Our culture is based on this idea of a mechanical universe. We got this from Isaac Newton and Rene Descartes. It goes back, Aristotle.
That it's predictable and
yes, exactly, and that the best way to understand things, the best way to do things, is through this mechanical, piecemeal, analytical approach.
So that's one model.
That's one model, and
but you now say that you sort of became aware of another model.
That's right, and which is, my point though is that it's easy to mistake that for creativity. And that's what a lot of people try to do. They try to be creative through this mechanical approach, but it can't happen. It just can't happen. You can make simulacrum. You can sort of pretend that what you're doing
like AI making a song.
Yeah, it's not actually creative. It simulates creativity.
Yes.
But it's not actually creative. Real creativity is both of you and not of you. It's both something that you channel, something that comes through you, nobody else. But it also doesn't really belong to you. Think of, to me, the creative process has several phases, but think of the inspiration phase where you've been working on something, you're banging your head against it, maybe it's not happening, and that's sort of the trying hard phase, and then an inevitable kind of failure, you just gotta rest for the day. And then when you sleep or when you do something else, then that creative impulse arises. The creative solution arises. It comes out of nowhere. Did you create that? Can you create spine-tingling music, just through your a manufacturing process? No, it's got to come from something deeper. It's got to come from something bigger than the individual. Of course, you channel it. It comes through your being.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the difference between players who are really technically proficient but then when they play you don't feel the emotion from it versus people who are able to create an emotional response with the sound waves that they are creating.
Exactly.
So you're creating the sound waves, but there's something kind of mysterious about what is it that imbues it with this ability to create an emotional response, and not only an emotional response, but sometimes a scene of floating in stars or whatever.
Yes.
All these things start to happen in our brain when we listen to inspiring music.
Absolutely, and that mystery is the core of the whole thing. That's the thing that we want to bring forth, we want to give expression to that mystery. That's the thing. That's the transformative thing. That's what beauty is. We go in the face of something beautiful because of its mystery.
We're moved.
Yeah, and if you can, Alan Watts, who's a philosopher I love, he said, if you can trace the mind of the artist, then it's not real art. If you can trace the thinking that the artist went through to create this thing, if you can...
Then it's manufactured.
It's like more of a series of connected dots.
Interesting.
But real living art doesn't do that. Living art preserves the mystery. And to bring that about in your own creative process, you have to preserve that mystery in your creative process, in yourself.
Which brings me back to the whole idea of discipline versus creativity or play, versus practice. Having the mindset of just playing and being open and curious as I play is really how I compose.
Yeah.
And then if I have a composition, then I want to practice it over and over again and refine it.
Yeah.
But it's a joyful process for me. I'm still holding on to this idea of or I'm still influenced by curiosity. What's going to happen if I do this?
Yeah.
Or, this will sound so cool if I do that. And some of it is traceable through the mind. But a lot of times when the melodies or rhythms come, I'm just moving my hands. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. It's not coming from my mind to my fingers. It's coming through me somehow.
Yeah.
And when I compose, what happens is if I stumble upon a passage that really resonates with me, then I hold on to that and I repeat it and I vary it and try to find more passages or rhythms or frequencies that resonate with me and make me feel good. Yeah. And that's how I know that the music is medicinal
Yeah.
for me. And then the idea is at the end, once I've, applied the discipline of like really refining it, to be able to offer something that is helpful to others and medicinal. And the hope is that maybe, in the same way that it was healing to me, it might be healing to others, or maybe it's healing in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not as though there's no place for discipline. It's not as though there's no place for willpower. It's just that they have to be used judiciously. They have to be used at the right point in the creative process. What I heard you describe is that you're experimenting with your guitar, and you're seeing what happens with what I call the inner audience member, the part of you that feels something when you hear something or play something. This is like the source of creativity. So you do something, you experiment something with your instrument, and then it creates some sort of emotional response, and that's what you base it on. And you don't choose that emotional response. It just happens,
it arises.
Right? This is mysterious. This is the mystery.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you kind of listen to that, listen to the mysterious source of creativity that's in you, and then the discipline comes in, giving that as beautiful a form, as perfect a form, as excellent a form as you can to match what your heart wants to feel.
Yes, and refining that is such a fun process. Yeah. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I'm going to really make this polished and really effective and really beautiful, and just like swim in those sound waves and in bliss. Yeah. That's the goal. Right.
And so that's what, to me, real discipline, like mature discipline, really means. It's something that comes later on in the creative process. Creativity, you have to remember the source of creativity and sort of speak and develop a relationship with that source of creativity. I have a whole chapter on this, multiple chapters in my book on this. And then learn how to give that form through your technique, through your practicing, and then it doesn't feel like discipline. Then it doesn't feel like hard work.
No, there's no part of the process that feels like a chore.
Yeah.
None of it, like zero. I pick up the guitar when I want to pick up the guitar, when I want to feel how good it feels to hear those sounds and to create them with my hands.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a fulfilling creative process right there.
I love it. I just love it. And I think for me, what's happened over time is my brain is now entrained to drop, like I was saying, into that state of I guess trance is one way of putting it. Kind of like feeling like I disappear.
Yeah.
And then there's just sound and movement, and this feedback loop of the sound waves going into my ears and then through my body, and just soaking in it, feeling like this like physical presence of the sound waves filling the room, that I'm swimming in as well. It just really puts me in sort of a hypnotized state of being that is so healing for me.
So I wonder if you can give like a really brief tutorial.
Yeah.
Like how do you do that?
I'll show you. So one thing that really helps is to shift your attention from what your fingers are supposed to be doing to the quality of the sound. So for me, like if I'm in this open C tuning, that just sounds so beautiful to me, and I listen. So here, listen to this. So the more I shift my attention to hearing the beauty of the sound and noticing that this thing is like the sound waves are jumping out of it, and I'm less concerned with where my fingers are going at this point, or partially, it's like a split actually. Some part of my brain, wants to stay in this scale of, like let's say I'm in major, I'm playing in a major, and then I want to throw in like a minor third. That whole thing, like I knew my brain had to know like where the minor third was and to decide when to put it in.
Yes.
but I'm also really trained. I've really trained myself to focus a large part of my attention on what the sound waves feel like to me. What they like picturing them flying off the guitar and going through space, like, and just being impacted by the sound waves physically.
Yeah.
So it's so fascinating to me how it feels when I play, and then being able to drop into that state by splitting my attention like that. It's just a beautiful feeling.
Yeah.
And I get to really appreciate the sound.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great description of the process that I described in my book called Playing from the Heart. Here, let's close out in just a minute.
Sure.
So Playing from the Heart is all about how you listen, where you listen from as you're creating.
That's interesting.
Are you listening from your conceptual mind or from your embodied experience? And the whole point then of like developing your technique is to better suit your soul. Mm-hmm. That's the whole fudging point.
Right? And I think so often we listen from our critical mind.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, is this good enough? Is this going to be good enough if I do this? And that's not putting your attention on the beauty of the sound, you know? It's really not.
Yeah. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We're going to end with a little bit of music here. And first, I want to invite you to check out the Soulforce Arts website. We have lots of offerings on there, including, very excited to be unveiling the Dream Factory very soon. The Dream Factory is an online collaboration space where creatives can make consistent and tangible progress towards their creative goals with accountability, community, and Soulforce.
Yeah, that sounds so cool. I love that idea.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It'll be coming out in the next week or two. And Raji's going to be one of our guest teachers.
Definitely.
Giving some workshops. It's going to be a really fun, exciting place to be. So stay tuned.
Hope to see you there.
All right, so we're going to play for maybe a minute or two here.
Yeah, and something that Joseph and I really value is that listening. Sometimes we call our playing the listening.
Yeah, deep listening.
Yeah, deep listening. All right.
And I could just do that hours and hours with you.
Totally. Thank you.
All right,